Hello and welcome to Designcast, a podcast where I interview a wide range of excellent guests in design and STEAM education to get their unique perspectives. My name is Jason Reagan, and I use my 20 plus years of experience as a design educator to dig deep into complex issues. This podcast has one simple mission: to create a community of people around the world that are interested in design and STEAM education. Each episode, I chat with guests from all corners of the design world, from classroom teachers to authors and even to educational consultants. We discuss a wide range of topics that we feel are relevant today. I do want to ask you that if you're enjoying this podcast, please leave a review, rate, subscribe, share, or download from your favorite podcasting app. This helps the podcast get discovered by listeners that might not find it otherwise. Also, it helps me to continually define the direction of future guests and episodes. Feel free to drop by my website, www.jasonreagan.ga, to leave me a comment or to sign up to be considered as a future guest on future episodes. Also, don't forget to stop by Anchor and leave me a voice clip that could even end up in an upcoming show. Thanks for listening, so let's get to it. For this episode of Designcast, I had the unique pleasure of speaking with Miss Tamizh Ponni. Tamizh worked as an IB educator at an international school in Bengaluru, India. She is currently pursuing her M.Tech PhD integrated course in data science. She has worked as a professional development coach and as a tech integrationist. She believes that the best thing in being an IB educator is that beyond teaching, there's a lot of deep learning involved in the process, and sees learning as a never-ending process. Technology integration gives her an interesting perspective into knowledge acquisition and skill building. We talk about her love of teaching and learning, as well as her published works about a dystopian society. I am sure that you will find this chat really dynamic. Welcome back to another episode of Designcast, and I'm absolutely honored to have Tamizh Ponni with me today. How are you today?
I'm great, Jason. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. And it's such a pleasure to talk to you today, and I really am excited about this discussion. And so can you just tell everyone a little bit about yourself and how you became involved in education?
Absolutely. It's really wonderful to be a part of this podcast and to interact with you. I've listened to your previous podcast where educators around the world came forward to share their experiences, and it has been really helpful, especially a time like this where, everyone has switched to online learning and a lot of changes are happening around us. My career started as a process executive in Infosys in the year 2013 once I finished my bachelor's in computer science and engineering, and I wanted to try my hands a bit on software development, product management and stuff like that. However, I could not pursue that career because I had a lot of health issues due to the deadlines that had to be met, due to the time management and, the additional work that I had to do even after office hours. So I even had to work on Sundays. Because of all this, I fell ill and had to take a break and then decide on what next. So I thought, why not try my hands on teaching, because so many people and many of my friends kept telling me for a very long time that I've been doing very good seminars in college. So, teaching could be a better career for me, and I can kind of explore multiple venues even through that. So I applied for an ICT teacher position in an international school in Bangalore in India, and they liked me. They liked the way I communicated my interest. I did a demo class and then I got selected and just started exploring IB for the first time because the school was also implementing it. It was very new. The school was going through the authorization phase at that point. So we had to work hard, build a curriculum, run the curriculum successfully, and kind of learn through our mistakes. And after that, I think 4 to 5 years just went by so quickly. I then became an MYP design teacher, where I saw how in middle years program, we can use technology, we can run STEM curriculum, we can coordinate with different teachers teaching multiple disciplines and see how children can develop solutions for real-time problems around them. When I was teaching MYP, I got an opportunity to pursue my M.Tech and PhD integrated course in one of the universities in Bangalore. And I think probably this is the right time to take a short break and see what I can do in terms of expanding my knowledge in my core area. And then right now I'm currently pursuing my higher studies and I've taken a break from teaching.
And you're right, teaching just flies right by once you start rolling along with that. And I believe I was reading earlier that you actually, the first few years in teaching, you were actually teaching much younger students. Is that correct?
That's right, yes. Yeah, so that was totally new for me because I have never been around kids much and I was very young. I was in my 20s. I was around 23, 24. It was really confusing in the beginning, but then once I got the hang of it, teaching is not just teaching, it's also about understanding the psychology of students, understanding the emotions of students. And classroom management comes easily for teachers who know how to deal with their students and their emotions. So that took at least a year for me to get into the system and get to know them well. After that, I also focused on how to build a challenging and effective curriculum for them because when I was in school, computer science and technology was a standalone subject. You just learn the theoretical part of computers and you have some sessions in the lab where you experiment with some software tools and then that's it. There is no way you can connect what you're doing in the lab with any other subject, whereas IB has a beautiful curriculum where you use ICT as a tool to effectively enhance the learning experience for students in all other subjects. So when I found this opportunity, I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is something we have not tried before. And it breaks down all the traditional barriers that were already in the educational system. And I was able to communicate with the teachers teaching different subjects like science, math, English, and other units and see how best I could develop the ICT curriculum to support the learning in other subjects. That way, I love developing the curriculum for grade 1 to grade 5 students. And there is no hard and fast rule that I have to follow this because at any point, based on the situation, based on the learner's needs, I can tweak the curriculum, I can create additional projects, I can help the children do more than what they're capable of. So this kind of experiences had really changed my perspective of how the pedagogical practice should be in schools. So that's how it worked out and the children started loving me. I loved them a lot and it was very difficult for me, in fact, to go from PYP to MYP. The transition was very difficult because I was so connected with them. Fortunately, I had some of them moving with me to 6th grade, so that was a relief.
Yeah, I think working with small children can be incredibly frightening, especially if you're not used to being around them. And, a lot of listeners here would probably understand that feeling completely because I do know a lot of design teachers who have to sort of have moments where they work in the elementary or the primary years for schools. It can be kind of frightening, but you're right. It's definitely a wonderfully rewarding experience because of how quickly the students adapt and learn and they're just really, really fun. So that's really fantastic. Very beautifully said. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
And so what were the circumstances which made it to where you needed to move out of the primary years and move into more of the middle years design situation?
So I am a person who would want to challenge myself. I cannot keep doing the same thing over and over. However, that being said, IB does not like the monotonous pattern as well because every year we experience a change in curriculum, a revamp that keeps happening in all subjects. But still, I wanted to challenge myself further because apart from being an ICT teacher, I was also managing the professional development training plan for my school where I would, connect with the coordinators of the respective programs and say, what kind of trainings they would want to offer for their teachers. And if any external trainers need to be connected with, I was kind of doing that. And I was also conducting a lot of workshops, introducing them to new technologies, new tools, sharing some best practices that worked out well in my class and stuff like that. At some point, I thought, what next? What else is there to explore? And then I thought, why not try the middle years program and see how the progression happens from PYP to MYP in terms of ICT and design. I also had a design curriculum sort of loosely based on the MYP curriculum, I kind of introduced them to the design cycle in a very elementary level. Like if you take the Stanford design cycle, the Stanford D cycle, that talks about the design cycle not in a very extensive way like how MYP does, but then it knows how to start and how to end. So kids in PYP, especially in 3, 4, 5, they were kind of making some design projects as an extension from their existing curriculum. So there would be at least one design class per month where they were free to explore some resources that are given to them and come up with an innovative, interesting product. And then when I looked into the MYP curriculum, I just loved it. I just loved how they had structured, how they have built the design curriculum, and how much freedom and flexibility we have in running the same. And that's why I thought, why not apply for this position? And that time, the department got empty because all the 3 main teachers had to move out of the school for various reasons. And it was like a perfect opportunity I was waiting for. And I applied, I gave a demo, and then, I just got into the program.
I'll tell you what, it's really hard to find dedicated, good design teachers because in many cases, such as yourself, people come into design as a second option. It's often not their first choice, right? Or not the thing that they went into schools for in many, many cases, or even they had other careers and then they came into teaching. And so it is something it's great that you've had this experience. And so when you got to your design department, what was the situation? You say that the whole department was new. What kind of things did you guys discover and have to do with that?
So when I went in, there was a vacancy for 2 more teachers to get into the department, and we're still looking for the candidates to be, interviewed and later be a part of the team. When I entered, usually when a teacher leaves, they give you some resources that they have created, some planners, some, presentation, assessment reports. But those were really not sufficient for me because when I worked in PYP, I used to have, I'm this person who is very, very particular about organizing things and keep everything documented so that the person coming after me should not be clueless. But unfortunately, when I moved, my expectations, could have been something extreme or high because what I expected was not there. I had to start from scratch. I just thought it just gave me like 15 to 20% of the overall picture of how things happened in the previous year. I did interact with some of the students. They said, we do things, but then we like design, but we don't like the portfolio part. We don't like the documentation part. So that was a big challenge initially. I had to make them understand that it's not clerical work that you need to do. This is something that's an integral part of your whole learning, and it's going to help you in future. And you need to enjoy documenting things. It shouldn't be something that you do out of compulsion. So I went on to the IB which was like a treasure trove of resources. I went into the design curriculum portal and then I looked at the samples that they had given. It felt as if that, a teacher who had already been in my situation has created the portal because I could really, really connect with every single thing that was present there. I did my own learning by going through the sample portfolios, sample assessment reports, the way design had to be taught in the class. I also checked some MYP design groups that were available on Facebook and started following some very good educators, design teachers like Ms. Lenny Dutton and many on Twitter as well. Their experiences, their resources, their blogs, their educational articles helped me a lot to understand the program. That's how I just started, I just started experimenting with things. I was really scared to get into the class when I had to, do the first design class teaching with my students. And gradually, that year just went by. And second year, I became very, very confident with what I was doing and I had a clear idea.
It's great to hear that you were able to use the Program Resource Center in that way, because there's been a lot of criticism for the Program Resource Center over the years. And I think that's because, things change and ideas and content moves around, and it's really hard to keep up. It's quite static. But I do think that there's a lot better resources there now than there were, say, 5 or 10 years ago.
Yeah,
it's definitely
absolutely
much better than it was. And it's great to have examples of student work and how they've been assessed and marked and whatnot. So that's great that you were able to use that resource in that way. That's fantastic. Tell me, what's been really easy when you were in the design department? What was easy for you as far as implementation? What came naturally?
Well, since I was a PYP teacher before, I knew most of the students and I know how to teach them a complex concept because PYP kind of prepares both the teachers and the learners to take up MYP, and then it goes on further that way. So the concept of running an inquiry-based classroom was not a challenge at all, because design thrives when there is a lot of inquiry around it. So the classroom facilitation part was absolutely easy and wonderful. Children kind of ran the whole unit by themselves. The biggest challenge for me was to help them work as a team, because there are a lot of issues when it comes to team dynamics. And I kept telling them that design is not something that's going to encourage you to create a product on your own, document your work, submit and move on, because you need to know how to work as a team. You need to be a team player. You need to be able to do peer reviews, peer assessments, give constructive criticisms to your peers. Working as a team has always been a challenge, and it always initially kind of created some hiccups, and then finally we kind of moved on. What was easy was the availability of support in the school, because our MYP coordinator and the subject teachers who were in the middle years program were all very, very welcoming. They were very helpful. I had a lot of experience with them as a professional development head. However, I was not a part of the system or the whole MYP department before. But then they were very, very warm and welcoming, and they gave me the time to cope with the situation. They said, whatever resources you need, we are here for you. This is how it's done in the other subjects. This is how the planner would look. This is how you need to do the assessments. This is how the reporting works. So that kind of peer coaching and peer learning helped me a lot.
And that's great to hear that you have quite that community in your school. And I think that to have a welcoming community like that is great. And so, wow, that's fantastic. You had a lot of help and you were able to do that. But what were some of the challenges? Did you have any challenges other than being 3 new teachers to the school, to the department anyway? So what were some of the challenges you guys had?
Yeah, that was definitely one, because the new teachers had, taught design, but then their experience was also not enough to kind of train me or, teach me something new about the subject, because it's like basically we were all the 3 of us were new to the system and the program. However, the main challenge that we had was the procurement of resources, because children came up with these ambitious ideas and we did not want them to kind of feel demotivated just because they didn't have the resource in hand. So when they come up with ambitious idea, we try to, tell them to tone it down or try to do the same kind of implementation with the existing resources, or try to get resources from home. Parents are very, very cooperative, but however, when you tell them to procure things at the last minute or send out an email saying that this is required, they kind of, get a little fussy saying that why can't the school provide this? How much ever resources we provide, sometimes it's not enough. So initially the lab had resources, but some of the resources were not in a proper condition. It did not work. The maintenance failed somewhere. So we had to do an audit and find out what went okay, what did not work, what needs to be discarded, what needs to be, purchased. There were some delays in the budget approval and procurement of resources. That has been a very, very difficult situation for at least 6 to 7 months, I should say. And after that, the second year, we were, kind of well prepared. We just said in the beginning of the academic year that this is what we need, and this is something that the children should bring from home, and these are the things we could provide from the school. So that way, it really took 1 year for us to, stabilize and streamline the process.
Well, that's great. That usually takes a lot longer in a design department than 1 year. So it's great that you were able to get, to get some parent support like that. It's not always easy because they think, wait a minute, what's the school's role in this?
Exactly.
So that brings me to a question for you. So what kinds of projects were you guys doing? Were you doing digital and product type projects?
We were running a combined design curriculum where grades 6 to 8 were the grades I was handling. So in grade 6, we had things like developing a logo design, creating a brand for an imaginary company or a product. So kids were working on Photoshop and Photopea, where, kids who did not have Photoshop at home can use a free tool called Photopea. So we always had this alternative where if one doesn't work, you can use the next one, kind of come up with the same output. They also worked on fabric design, where they kind of knew the stitching methods, how to do different types of stitching, embroidery on a piece of cloth, and how to just replicate the same logo design on a piece of cloth or a fabric. And we also had for grade 7 robotics, where we taught them through Arduino programming. We had these Arduino kits that the school provided, and we taught them how to program using Arduino C and build small rovers that can be used to explore the surface of another planets like Mars or Moon. They also understood how to do 3D printing in 7th grade. So we have a 3D printer at the school where they understood how it works, what are the parts of the 3D printer, and they used Tinkercad, an online tool, a free tool, to develop 3D models, and they, exported the design, put it into the printer, and saw their models getting printed through the 3D printer. And for grade 8, we had website design as a digital product. They also did sustainable development design, where they picked up discarded plastics or other unused materials and kind of reused it. They talked about reusing, upcycling, downcycling, and kind of came up with innovative products through those discarded products. And they also had to do some branding, some marketing for the product that they have created. So they have to develop a website for that product through HTML and CSS and, advertise the product. And yes, they also had a unit on automation where using advanced Arduino C programming or Python, they have to come up with an automation system model. Like when you open a door, suddenly an alarm goes off, or when there isn't enough water in a plant pot, there is a small buzzer, alerting you, systems like that. So it was very, very interesting.
So it sounds like there's quite a combination of systems design and a combination of digital and product design. That's great that you guys were able to make that kind of come together in a nice progression. And so I'm sure that the students really enjoyed that, especially since they were set up from PYP through your ICT lessons as well. So that's great that they had that. And so let me ask you, so you said now you're doing some advanced studies and whatnot. So can you tell me a little bit about what you're studying and what your plan is for that?
So I am doing an M.Tech program on data science, which talks about analyzing the big data that's out there. So we use different models to extract the data from the users, from the customers. Now, for instance, if you take the Amazon site, you just go on and purchase something, and automatically it would recommend some products that can go along with what you already purchased. So these are all some algorithms that work in the back end, try to collect the user data and try to make decisions. So basically the data science part talks about how to collect data, how to manage the data, and how to make meaningful decisions out of the data. So far, I think I have covered Python programming, using Python programming, how to do data modeling, data visualization, how to come up with meaningful graphs and charts with an existing data that's already in a tabular format, and then make a decision out of it. I'm also doing some statistical analysis, which talks about, the concentration points in a certain problem, like how many of the people prefer to go for this product but not buy the other one. I'm also doing database, where they talk about how to use the query language to fetch information from a large database, how to interpret the information and stuff like that. So it's a very interesting curriculum because most of the classes are online, so it kind of works well for me to sit, relax, and process the information. And then after a month, we will have project that we need to present as a team. So all of them are working professionals, whoever has taken up the course. So we get together on a Skype meeting and kind of prepare a presentation for the project that we are going to present. And then there would be a Viva vote and then an online test. That's how it's progressing. And I'll be having more challenging papers in the future.
So now you've become the design student.
Absolutely.
What it sounds like to me. What is your vision for that? What do you think you want to do when you complete your studies?
So I have always been keen on experiencing the three models of IB. I've done PYP, I've done MYP. Now I really wanted to go and, teach the DP students. And when I took a look at the DP curriculum, it was pretty advanced. And at that point, I thought maybe I'm not prepared enough to handle DP. And if I kind of continue in MYP for 2 to 3 years, for me, working and doing studies parallelly was very, very difficult. I'm sure I cannot do justice for at least one. And I'm a person who want to give my 100% into whatever I do. So I thought, why not take a break, finish the higher studies, and then see if I can get back to DP, or maybe spend another year in MYP, just connect with all the left out things and then kind of apply for DP and ideally move on to DP in the end. So being a DP teacher is my long-term goal.
I think that as the direction that the DP is going in, I think that you probably will have lots of opportunities for that because I think there's quite a bit of review going on, a lot of research in what direction, of course, that the DP wants to go in. So that sounds great that you've taken this much passion and put it into action. So that's great.
And I think
that you've done that.
I also have to give credit to some of my students because I got an opportunity to mentor a few students in NYP 5, grade 10, when they did their personal project. And I also interacted with a lot of DP students when the extended essay was announced. All these little factors, kind of triggered my interest to, expand my knowledge before I think of further progression in the career.
Sure. That's very responsible of you to do that. I'm sure that your students will benefit from that. And it's wonderful that you've had this opportunity to be able to, in a sense, take a sabbatical or a break in order to do this. I mean, not everyone has that luxury. So that's great that you have that opportunity. And so let me just shift gears a little bit. This is so interesting, but I want to hear about what book you would recommend that everyone stops right now and reads.
Right. So I'm a person who hardly reads books related to curriculum or education because I keep that separate. I'll read books for pleasure. I usually go for fictional novels. However, when I came across this book called Think Like Da Vinci by Michael Gell, I just thought that, could be a reference book for design. Maybe, I can just pick some good practices from this book sometime and try it out in my class. However, when I started reading about the book, this guy has clearly and beautifully connected the 5 senses like seeing, smelling, hearing, touching, all the 5 senses with the concept of design. And he says Da Vinci has tapped his potential through these 5 senses. For instance, when he paints, he always kept flowers and scents in his room, which also triggered his mind to be more creative, to come up with brilliant masterpieces in his room. So when he says this, he also tries to say that when you teach design is something that is a product of your creativity. And when you try to instill that in young learners, you need to set up that kind of an environment. You need to show them examples. So every time I teach design in my class or every time I introduce design to a group of students, I take Da Vinci as one person and tell he's a polymath. He has done so many things. He's not just the person who painted Mona Lisa. He's done so many things. He has made blueprints for these ambitious machines which cannot even be created even now. He is a wonderful writer. He's a wonderful artist. He's a beautiful painter. So when you explore these multiple dimensions of this single person, I was able to help them connect with design very easily. And the book also beautifully explains the importance of mind maps and concept maps, because most of the time my children do not know where to start. When I say, think about this problem, come up with a solution, they would be like, can you please guide me, give me some questions because I have no clue how to think. This is one question that comes up. Yes, PYP prepares them for all this. However, there are still students who just don't know the trigger. So this book helped me understand the importance of mind maps and how to help students expand their knowledge and construct that map on a piece of paper, derive inquiry questions from the given concept map or the mind map, and then finally arrive at a solution. Not everything in the book can be experimented or implemented in the class, but it definitely gives you a wider view of what design is all about.
Well, you have certainly opened my eyes because I'll be adding that to my reading list. I think that's a great idea because you know how important memories are and senses to trigger those memories. So, and I can't think of a single teacher probably listening who's never had a student that said, I don't know where to start. So I think that's great that you've added that in. And so in preparing for this discussion, I also saw that you yourself are a published author. Could you tell me a little bit about that?
This is a very, very strange part of my life where I never imagined that I would publish a book, because I'm an avid reader, but I never thought I would write something. For me to express my stress or, the stress buster was always writing something on a piece of paper. So I used to maintain a diary where I kind of record my everyday happenings, but then I gave up on it after some time. And then I thought, why not, start writing a small story, an interesting story. And I'm into watching movies that has this dystopian fictional setting where what would happen in the future after 5 or 10 years or after 20 years? How would be the future? As I started watching a lot of shows and movies of that sort, I came up with this idea where I thought, this would be sounding too crazy for you. And I sent this story to so many publishing houses, and most of them thought I was crazy and said, we thank you for your contribution, but I don't think this is a good thing for us to go ahead with. So what if our lives are actually controlled by certain group of people, probably inhabiting another planet? It could be like a big call center or an office where they sit every day and try to chart our future. So every single decision you take is being controlled by the person that's in another planet or in another universe. That could be the person who has left the earth. That could be the person who is your forefather or an ancestor, anybody. However, you are not completely in control of your decisions, but then there is an invisible force that's in the other end of the spectrum trying to control your day-to-day activities. So I had like 4 to 5 chapters, standalone stories, which kind of reflect this philosophy. And that's how the first book got made. And the second book was basically an experience about workplace politics, where an organization coming under the control of a new system. I mean, there is an existing company which is taken over by another boss or a manager, and then how the existing employees feel because of the sudden change, and how the leadership change can affect the entire network inside that existing system, something like that. That was another fictional story. And, both of it was liked by this particular publishing house, and they, readily accepted to publish it. And whenever I find time, now I cannot write this much, so I kind of write small poetries and I send it to some web magazines, and a few get picked up and they publish it. So that's my stress buster.
Wow. Tamer, I'll tell you what, you are definitely well-rounded and balanced.
Oh God,
you have lots of...
I'm very, very happy that you didn't call me crazy.
No. I think it's fantastic. We have to have a stress buster. I love you calling it that.
Yeah.
And I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, we have to have something to keep us sane, not go crazy.
Absolutely. That's the word.
Yeah.
That's the word.
Absolutely. So, all right. So now's the time. If people want to get in touch with you and find out more about your book or find out more about your studies, how can they do that? What's the best way to get in touch?
So I'm very, very active on social media. So they can message me on Facebook or through Twitter. Yep. I mean, I keep checking my Messenger. I keep checking my Twitter messages all the time, every day. So that's the best way that they can be in touch. And I'm very, very happy to connect with educators, share my experiences, even learn from them, and see how best we can support each other.
Great. I will make sure that your social media contacts are part of our show notes so that people who want to reach out can get in touch and grow your network even more. This has just been so much fun. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you and having such a great time just listening to your story. And so I would really love to extend an invitation to you for when you do finish your studies, just as a follow-up conversation to how it went and where you plan to go from there.
Absolutely.
So maybe
Thank
we
you
can
so
meet
much.
again after that, okay?
Absolutely. Wow. Such a privilege. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. Explore more podcasts at www.teachbetterpodcastnetwork.com. Now let's get on to the episode.
I hope you enjoyed that episode of DesignCast. I'm Jason, your host, and I produced and created this podcast. If you have any input, I would love to hear from you, and I look forward to seeing you again really soon. I am so excited to announce the launch of a new podcast network called DNA Podcast Network. The Design Network Alliance, or DNA, was founded by Ivo Hanan and myself as a result of DesignCast number 16. We talked all about the need to connect design educators globally. DNA is a collective group of like-minded design educators from around the world. We have one simple mission: to connect design and STEAM educators with each other and with designers that want to make a difference in design education to make it better for future generations. The DNA Podcast Network is a hub for podcasts that cover the topics around design, design and technology, design thinking, STEAM, and STEM education. If you are interested in hearing more great content, head over to www.dnapodcastnetwork.ga today. Click on the thumbnail of the podcast that you want to hear and and joy. If you have any other podcasts that you enjoy that cover similar topics, please feel free to get in touch with me and let me know so that I can look at adding them to the network. Finally, spread the word. Share with your network and your PLN and use the hashtag DNA Podcast Network.